Everybody, welcome to Wings on Katella, episode 8.2. We recorded last week, and someone, we won't mention who, his initials are TBW, had some internet issues that caused the download of the podcast to not work. So we're doing this again, and entirely new information, our regular cast. If you're unfamiliar with us, we are Wings on Katella. We cover Orange County sports, the Los Angeles Angels, the Anaheim Ducks. If you're aware of those two teams, you are aware there is a lot going on with both of those teams. So we have our experts from the Sporting Tribune. Zach Kavanaugh, you were in my top left corner. I don't know if that's what it's going to be when we run the show. But Zach, how are you doing? Zach Kavanaugh covers the Anaheim Ducks for us.
I'm a little exhausted. Yesterday was a long day with a lot of work done, but feel good about the work and looking forward to moving forward with everything.
Absolutely. If you couldn't tell, we are recording on Friday the 9th. We have some news that happened on Thursday the 8th that Zach is referring to. But before we get to that, Jack Janes, you were in my bottom right corner. Jack, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Getting ready to head out to the Angels Stadium in a couple hours, so looking forward to that.
Attaboy. And Thomas Murray, I forgot to mention, you can follow Zach Kavanaugh on Twitter at ZachCav, ZACHCAV. You can follow Jack Janes on Twitter at JackJanes_. Jack covers both the Ducks and Angels for us, and as well as Thomas Murray at Thomas_L_Murray. Tommy Lee Murray. How you doing, pal?
I'm good, man. Yeah, not too bad. Pretty good day. It's warm now, so that's nice. But how are you doing, Taylor?
I'm good, man. I like that you mentioned it's warm. This is the first day I've been. I think it's gonna be 80 degrees on the mountain, which is a big deal. So
yeah, we got a pool day planned tomorrow. That's
the
official kickoff of it's summertime.
I like that. We're gonna
only
have
for
to
a few
98
days.
in La Puente. Lovely.
Caliente La Puente.
Yeah, I love it.
We get Jack Janes out of Arizona just to bring him back to Arizona. So
It's only for a few days.
yeah. Big news. Let's just lead it off. Anaheim Ducks hired Joel Quenneville to be their next head coach. I think we're going to address this as easily as we can. There is serious baggage included with Joel Quenneville. Whether rightfully or not, it is baggage. And Jack, there's a lot of people that don't understand what happened with Kyle Beach in 2010 that involved Joel Quenneville as part of the Aldrich trials. So, Jack, can you give us a little bit of a breakdown of actually what the baggage is with Joel Quenneville?
Yeah, so if you're not familiar, there was the 2010 Blackhawks scandal involving Kyle Beach, who was a player on that team. And this is a trigger warning for anyone who's sensitive to sexual assault topics. This is what it has to do with. Kyle Beach was sexually assaulted by a video coach, and it got brought up in a meeting. There's different various accounts of how long that meeting was, what that meeting entailed exactly, but either way, the bottom line is it was brought up to Quenneville and the rest of the Blackhawks staff, and they decided to, focus on winning and not take action right away. That's the very basic SparkNotes version of it. I have 3 screenshots from the official report that someone posted on Twitter, and they highlighted parts that had to do with Quenneville. So I will read word for word what those words are in the report, starting with this. In particular, according to the Director of Human Resources, Gary said that during the meeting, Quenneville appeared angry and was concerned about upsetting team chemistry. This was when the issue was brought up to him originally. And another quote, the Director of Human Resources also recalled McDonough describing the meeting in his office on May 23rd after Game 4 ended with Mac Isaac, Bowman, Gary, and Quenneville. The Director of Human Resources recalled that McDonough told her that during the meeting, the group decided not to alert Human Resources or legal outside counsel and to not do anything about the incident during the playoffs so as to not, quote unquote, disturb team chemistry. And the third one, Bowman recalled that, and this is Stan Bowman, who was the general manager at the time. Bowman recalled that after learning of the incident, Quenneville shook his head and said that it was hard for the team to get where they were and they could not deal with this issue right now. So those are the word for word pieces from that, and that's only a few of them. There's, as Zach pointed out earlier before we started recording, there's a lot of other mentions of Joel Quenneville, but those are, I feel like, the main sticking points of his name in that report.
And just to continue on this, just so we have everything straightened and clear, Zach, this is the Aldrich report. You said it was 101 pages was the investigation. It was 101 pages. In a very brief way of putting it, it's just the inaction of Joel Quenneville that is part of what his baggage is, and it's what he didn't do during this investigation and during the events that transpired that caused this investigation that are the primary source of why he had as much baggage as he did. Is that accurate, Zach?
Yeah, more or less. The report kind of goes on to say in various spots that there was no real. The report says that there was no evidence of any actual decision being made in the meeting. It was more of a, as you said, and as I've kind of characterized, just negligence of people. Quenneville has said afterwards in an interview he did last year when he got reinstated that he left the meeting assuming that the upper management had it under control, that they were going to deal with it. And Stan Bowman, who's the general manager of the Blackhawks at the time, has also since been reinstated and is now the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. He said the same thing, that he thought it was in the hands of John McDonough, the team president, who hasn't received any of the same scrutiny as a lot of the other members of this that have been banned and such. He did leave his position with the Blackhawks in 2020 and hasn't taken a job since, and I doubt he ever would again, but he also hasn't faced the same sort of public-facing outcry that guys like Quenneville and Bowman have. And the other important thing to note, and this is kind of what Joel Quenneville's main defense in most of this has been, is that despite all the varying accounts, most people involved say that there wasn't a actual description of what the incident was, just that there was some sort of improper incident going on between Kyle Beach, the player, and Brad Aldrich, the video coach. With Brad Aldrich, not only sexually assaulting him, but threatening him with violence, using his position of power, trying to say that he had control over roster decisions to pressure him into do these things. And all of it is just so terrible and horrible, as everyone involved has said afterwards, and Quenneville said yesterday, and anybody that can read the report, you can get the full details on all that. But when it comes to Quenneville, it sort of is a thing of, first of all, he came into that meeting late too, so there could have been stuff that was talked about when he got in or before he got in. Again, there's it's the problem with the report and what other people have pointed to. Everybody kind of says a different thing, with also nobody saying a whole lot. So the long and short of it is that Quenneville learned that there was something going on, didn't know the extent of it, didn't follow up with questions about it, didn't ask, as his superior, as the head coach to the video coach, he could have, it was within his right to ask questions. He didn't. He told that other people were handling it. So he decided to, as he said on this podcast a year ago, stay in his lane, do his job, and they went on to win the Stanley Cup. And where the rest of this comes in too is, after this stuff had come out, the team still let Brad Aldrich participate in the Cup celebrations, get his name engraved on the Stanley Cup, receive a Stanley Cup ring, and they didn't investigate him at the time because they said, we can either investigate you or you can leave by mutual agreement, which he did. And then later he would go on to sexually assault a minor while coaching a high school team in Michigan. And there's been some conflation on that. Just one more point to kind of get the full breadth of this and kind of head some things off. People have said that the Blackhawks wrote a recommendation letter for Aldrich for that Michigan job, and that Quenneville wrote that letter as well. Quenneville didn't write that letter, one. And two, the letter only came up in a lawsuit about this. And the Blackhawks said that the claim that there was a letter of recommendation written was demonstrably false. And that lawsuit was later dismissed. Now, whether it's dismissed because it was settled or because it was the judge deemed it not necessary. None of that detail is available or was made public, but where Quenneville's writing anything comes in is, and this is also in the report, that he wrote a positive job performance evaluation for Aldrich after the season, but it's a lot of boilerplate stuff that he used on everybody's performance evaluation, saying, "Hey, you did a good job and we won the Stanley Cup. Congratulations." Which again sort of points to the negligence of, you knew that something was going on and you decided to just kind of rubber stamp this performance evaluation and move on. And so that led to his removal from the Florida Panthers job at the time. 7 games into the season, he had to resign and was summarily banned for 2.5 years. Got reinstated last year and is now where we are today.
All right. So I think we are across the point of what the situation was, etc. With that said, this is open platform, guys. I'm going to go to each one of you. What are your thoughts on the hiring of Joel Quenneville when it comes to the Anaheim Ducks? And it's open platform. Like Jack, I appreciate that you mentioned the trigger warning, because this is a serious issue. And some people can say that Joel, everyone's entitled to their own opinion about what Joel should have done, did, and didn't do, right? Everyone's entitled to that opinion no matter what. So let's get our thoughts on whether this is whether you believe this is a good hockey move, whether you think this is a bad move in general because of his past, whatever it is. It's open platform to everyone here. Thomas, we haven't gone to you yet. Thomas, what are your thoughts here?
Well, you have a team that wants to win now, and you're bringing, as I was reading in Zach's article earlier, you're bringing the second winningest coach in the NHL, if I'm correct. So I mean, that's a good step forward in regards to that. I just kind of want to go off some things that we were talking about last week in last week's episode that didn't make it. After you went out, Taylor, one of the things we were saying was, could this hiring kind of mess up everything that the Ducks have been building the last year, in terms of just building this fan base back? It's not that it's never been established. It's been very established, but they've had they've been having a lot of great momentum over the last year with the rebrand and all those things, youth infusion, and people are really buying in. And now you go out and you make a risky move like this. So that's kind of the same thing. I'm just kind of wondering, I'm like, okay, is this worth the risk? If they win and it's true that he's actually changed, then it's a great move. But if they lose, people are going to come after them regardless. And I think the other thing is just one of the topics we talked about is he out of touch with hockey? Sports are constantly always changing. And it's been about 3 years since he's last coached. And really, I mean, yeah, he had that job in 21 with Florida, but mind you, he appeared in about 6-7 games or so.
Seven games, yep.
Into the season. And I mean, that's not really a year of coaching, to be honest with you. So you want to say maybe he's 4 or 5 years out of touch in hockey. So it's a risky move for sure. The only thing that I'm going to go with is I'm going to trust Henry Samueli, who's probably one of the better owners in sports. Just kind of reading his comments of the whole situation has just kind of made me feel better about the move. I know, when as I was reading in Zach's article today about Samueli, they did a big research dive into this whole situation, and I mean, I think they thoroughly looked into it, and I think for Samueli, he's not really an owner that would want to kind of jeopardize the state of his franchise if he knew that, okay, hey, this guy's kind of changed. Here's the allegations, here's the reports. But if he thinks that this is the best move for this team, I mean, I'll stand by him on it. I do appreciate that they are going to be doing a lot of community service, as I was reading in your story, Zach. I think that's a really big step forward. It's really just a situation of only time will tell. I want to hope, I want to look at it and hope that it works out. But, you have to show, and actions speak louder than words.
I want to touch on a few points. Thomas, Zach, you were there yesterday, and it was mentioned how many organizations that Joel is planning to work with, has been working with. That's great. That is good news. That does not give him a free pass. It does not mean all is forgotten. Now, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. There's no way that Joel's ever going to... If this ever happens again, Joel is going to be the first at the forefront of this saying, oh, okay, well, I've been through it. Let me switch gears. You can't forget what has happened. And that's the thing that is always going to stick around. And Thomas, you mentioned, this is something that the Ducks legacy, the Samueli legacy and the Anaheim Ducks, it could have a taint, especially with a particular group of fans. And it might not be this group, it might be this group. There are definitely people calling for, they're not going to renew their season tickets. They're not going to show up at Ducks games. That's perfectly fine because they are entitled to that draw. Same as it's fine for other people to go and celebrate this. I liked your points, Thomas. I wanted to draw a few from it. Jack, your thoughts here on Joel Quenneville and the move the Anaheim Ducks have made?
Yeah, I agree with the things that Thomas was saying about how, like we talked about last week, he's been out of the league for 4 years. How is he gonna, coach what's his coaching style going to be, just from a pure hockey standpoint, before I get into the other stuff? But from a pure hockey standpoint, how is he going to coach this team? Is he going to adapt to how the league's changed over the last 4 or 5 years? And also, time will tell about that. From the press conference standpoint, I think most of the things that he said were the right things to say. I was expecting a little bit more of a PR based kind of lip service of, yes, I know what I did was wrong and we're looking to do better moving forward and dodging the tougher questions. But I feel like he did a pretty decent job of giving thoughtful answers into the questions that were asked. And I don't know, time will tell with everything, because actions, like Thomas said, actions speak louder than the words. And that's the only way that he's going to build trust back into this fan base. Is through actions. It was great that he said the team's going to be working with advocacy groups and all that stuff moving forward. Now we need to see that. I don't think that's going to win back everybody that's pissed off, rightfully so, with this move, but it's a step in the right direction. And I'm not going to say, because everyone feels different about this, obviously, I'm not going to say by following through with those actions, it's going to make up for what they've done. But at least they're actually doing something, and they recognize what they're doing is not the greatest thing.
No, agreeable. I mean, handing the cookie jar kind of stuff, right? No, I'm with you. You mentioned something about the PR. I know that Joel read a statement off of a piece of paper. That's perfectly fine. That's permittable and everything. Zach, you were there, and I called you right after and said how proud I was of you for asking the tough questions. You and Derek and Eric and Greg all did a great job. The Ducks media contingent is in bulk a small media contingent, and Zach, you were a large part of that. Something I want to say before we jump into Zach, your thoughts here. One of the first thoughts I had when all this was going on is I couldn't imagine the nightmare that Alex Gilchrist and Steve Brown, the PR reps for the Anaheim Ducks, have to deal with when it comes to this stuff. I don't know their social media manager, but dear God, poor person that has to run social media. But
Tyler's got a good spirit. He can bounce through it.
The point of it is good on the Ducks. Pat Verbeek, Samuelis, Steve and Alex on PR side. No one held back, right? No one held back. This was the direct. Usually, when you introduce a coach, it's, "Oh, aren't you happy? What's the future like? This is great." Joel had to strictly answer questions about this investigation and everything that's gone on in his past. So I give I give an attaboy to the PR team in particular with Steve and Alex, but give it a little bit of an attaboy to the organization. Zach, what are your thoughts? Obviously, you were there yesterday. Generalized thoughts on the hiring, more so than anything else.
On the hiring itself, the thing that kind of stood out from the comments was, we'll start with the hockey side, that his coaching resume is unimpeachable. And if you're a team that is in the position the Ducks are, which isn't too dissimilar from where Chicago was in 2008 when they hired Joel Quenneville ahead of those 3 Stanley Cups. Chicago hadn't made the playoffs in 6 years. The Ducks haven't made it in 7 seasons. The 2 years prior to Quenneville getting there, the Hawks drafted Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. The Ducks have drafted Leo Carlsson. They traded for Cutter Gauthier. They have these foundational pieces, and now they're ready to make those jumps forward. And, from a hockey perspective, I don't think you can argue that this is a good move. And even with the time that he's been out, I feel like if there was any answers that were a little light on substance, it was that when asked about it at first, Quenneville's like, well, I've watched a lot of games, and I actually went to go see the Ducks play in Tampa once last year, and wow, they looked great. And it was like, okay, do you have any other thoughts about what's going on here? And it was, good young players, and well, what kind of game do you want to play? We want to play fast. We want to play. I actually thought that the best answer in terms of how they're going to play probably came from Frank Vetrano, who was one of the players that was made available there. He played for Quenneville in Florida and talked about making plays within a structure, playing hard, playing relentless. They did mention puck possession, which was always a buzz topic with Greg Cronin, but they also, the key part is when we do lose the puck, we fight hard to get it back, and that's sort of kind of the key of any puck possession. So you got to play fast, you got to play hard. Okay. Trying to describe how hockey teams play is such a nebulous endeavor that I kind of give that a pass until we get to training camp in September and October, and we really try to dial down on what this team is. And then from the rest of it, I think I came out of yesterday much in a better headspace about the hire. I mean, we had joked a couple weeks ago when we talked about potential hirings. You went through everybody like, oh, are they going to hire David Carl? Are they going to hire Jay Woodcroft? Are they going to hire Rick Tocchet? I don't think was fired at the time, and then I joked to you like, oh, you don't want to talk about Joel Quenneville? Haha, like they wouldn't actually do that. I mean, apparently, if you read through the tea leaves of the press conference, and Elliot Friedman said as much this morning on his 32 Thoughts podcast, that it seemed like Quenneville was kind of the favorite from the start, and everything was going to be about getting over the hump of the public blowback and the and just kind of double checking Joel's work. They were pretty thorough about how much he did and how much the Ducks did to vet he gave a long list of people he's worked with, advocacy groups that he worked with. The Ducks apparently, in some capacity, whether it was Verbeek or team president Aaron Tietz or Samueli himself, talked to many of these organizations, all of them, they said, in one capacity or another. Elliot Friedman this morning specifically said that Pat Verbeek talked to Kyle Beach twice. Aaron Tietz, the team president, talked to Kyle Beach twice. And Joel Quenneville had mentioned in the press conference that he had talked to Kyle Beach the morning of being hired. And it was also reported by Quenneville's daughter a year ago that Kyle Beach had already given the blessing for Q to coach in the league again. And I do think the most important people that we talked to yesterday, like Verbeek, kind of whatever, the players are always going to support their coach sort of thing. It wasn't even the press conference setting. It was when we got to move over to the side and talk to to Quenneville face to face and Henry Samueli face to face. And I think there was a real genuineness to what Quenneville was saying, whether that's just because he was really coached up on the PR team or practiced these lines for the last 4 years. I can't tell you that, but I feel like he has acknowledged and accepted that he made a mistake in the way that they handled that situation, that he has said numerous times that they should have asked more questions, they should have pushed harder. So and Samueli also said that they as the team felt they did due diligence and they talked to Joel extensively, and they had to get to a point where they would be comfortable dealing with the blowback that was going to come from this, because they wanted the hockey side of it, but they needed to become comfortable enough with everything else. And they felt that they were comfortable enough to a certain level and then some to say, okay, no, Joel has learned from his mistake. Joel's a good person. This is what Samuel said. And they pulled the trigger. And it was important for me to ask them and for them to answer the fact whether they're going to follow up. As we've said, that all of this is, as I said in the story I wrote this morning on thesportingtribune.com, they said everything they could possibly say yesterday. They were as open and as transparent as they possibly could have been. They didn't dodge questions. They made, as I said, Verbeek and Quenneville available in a press conference. Samueli available in a one-on-one. Vetrano, Terry, Strome available in one-on-ones. And again, Verbeek and Quenneville available a second time in one-on-ones, as well as there was an advocate there that Quenneville would work with, Chris Jensen, who was available, that some of the media talked to, and then just the support of everybody else that was there. They did all they could possibly say from a PR standpoint, from a getting ahead of this, from, as Samuel said, being transparent and tackling this issue head on. So I give them full props to that. And now it's all about going forward. They have to follow up with what they said about meeting with these advocacy groups. They have to follow up with, they made a kind of a general statement, or Samuel said that the team, it was a priority for both Verbeek and Quenneville that the team is the safest in the league when it comes to these matters. Hopefully you don't have to deal with the matters in the first place. There's no way to really check up on that. But, you say that you want to make this an open door policy. You open up the hotline, which was brought up that in the wake of this Blackhawks scandal, there was a hotline set up for team employees across the league to call in and make complaints about workplace malpractice. And the first person to get the brunt of that was former Ducks general manager Bob Murray, who was accused of an abusive work culture, verbally abusing employees, and resigned and entered rehab for alcohol abuse, and that led to Pat Verbeek getting hired. So it's kind of a domino effect from the 2010 Blackhawks, a domino effect to Joel Quenneville eventually making his way to Anaheim. Kind of an odd daisy chain there. All of that to be said, to wrap up and let other people talk here. I feel like they did everything they could do. I feel like of the coaches available, like I still would have liked them to still make a decision that didn't have to come with all of this couching and explanation and everything. Like, I think Jay Woodcroft would have been a great choice. I think Rick Tocchet would have been an interesting guy to talk to further along with. They apparently talked to David Carl for 2 days, according to Emily Kaplan of ESPN, before he decided to go back to Denver, University of Denver. So, but they made the decision they made. They got themselves comfortable with it. They explained every bit about the process they went through to make this decision. And I think, as you said, Taylor, there are people that are never going to be happy with the decision. There's some people that will just never be won over. And I don't think I'm here to say, oh, well, you know what? You guys should change your mind. They did it. I think it's perfectly valid for anybody to be mad about this, especially if you know someone that has been a sexual abuse survivor, sexual assault survivor, have had it happen to you yourself, or are just a concerned person in the world. I think it's perfectly viable. But I do think that Joel Quenneville did the work that he said he was supposed to do. And they double checked it, and they fact checked it. And what are you going to do? Can I kick the guy to the curb forever? Like, are we not people that believe in second chances ever? I do think he should have maybe worked his way up by being a consultant or a special advisor somewhere before. Like, before he got hired in Chicago to replace Dennis Savard, he was a special advisor to the team and then got put in as the head coach early in October that year. But all that to be said, I feel like they did the work. I feel like Joel Quenneville was pretty genuine in what he was saying. And now it's all about the follow-up, whether that's doing the work in the community or simply winning the games on the ice and actually getting the team to the playoffs like they said they need. That everybody has said is the stated goal going forward. They just got to do it. And that will only come with time. And I feel like in this moment, they've done what they needed to do, could possibly do. And so now it's about what happens in the next tomorrow, week, month, season, 3 seasons, however long it lasts, to make this a standing change and a force for something better than what they left in Chicago.
And just to add quickly, before I get to my main point, as you brought up Bob Murray and the complaints, that how funny is it? Well, not really funny, but ironic is it? How ironic is it that the Angels go from Bob Murray, general manager who created a toxic work environment, to then a head coach in Greg Cronin, who, by different accounts from different players that have moved on, said that Greg Cronin at times created a toxic work environment, to now Joel Quenneville, who obviously comes with all the baggage that he comes with. Just a bad string of what's the word I'm looking for? You get what I'm trying to say, though.
Circumstances, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah. Trying to say it in like the nicest way possible. But to the main point I wanted to bring out was, leading up to this hire, once it got announced that he was a serious candidate, and before he was hired, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense why I wouldn't say, I hate saying the perfect fit, but in Joel Quenneville's sense, he was like, the Ducks were the perfect fit for him. He's going to a team that he keeps saying is young and on the rise, like the Blackhawks when he took over. He's coming to a team with very low stakes in terms of media pressure. You guys do a great job of covering this team, Zach, and it's awesome the work you guys do, but it's a small contingency group. It's not like he's going to the New York Rangers where he's in a zoo of media members asking him questions and getting peppered all day. So the stakes were lower for this. And also the connection he has with Verbeek. Verbeek said he's known him since he was 18 years old. They were teammates on the Whalers way back in the day, and they've remained friends since then. So he has that connection. So I think as time went on, the more I realized that the Ducks were the perfect team for Joel Quenneville, for better or for worse, no matter how I felt or how other media members felt or how Ducks fans feel. It just felt like it was a perfect storm that was brewing.
Yeah, Pat Verbeek wanted to help his old buddy out. And
that's hockey, baby.
That's hockey. Like
Boys club.
For as much as there was questions, give props to Greg Beecham too. He made a point to ask both Verbeek, Samuele, and Quenneville about the fact that Verbeek got his job because Bob Murray got kicked out for the old boys club, the old school hockey mentality, and now you have Verbeek, who is an old school hockey guy, and now you have Quenneville, who came from an old school hockey system, which is probably a failure of why the Blackhawks did what they did. And now he has to modernize himself and change and do all that stuff. And I feel like Verbeek kind of muscled his way through an answer. Samuele had a pretty good answer. And I think Quenneville did too. But it's I forgot where I was kind of going with that point, but hockey is very much still, despite all the changes, despite the modernization, despite embracing analytics and opening up to the players and all that sort of stuff, it's still, hey, I played with this guy back in, the 80s in Hartford, and so they played together for like one full season, but they're still friends, and he wanted to give his friend a shot, and his friend just so happens to be a 3-time Stanley Cup champion who is the second most winning coach of all time. So you're going to find a way to make that work. And I do genuinely believe, based on comments from Elliot Freeman about talking to Kyle Beach, and things that Samuele said, that if there was any hang up in the process, I really kind of got the feeling that there would have been at least a tougher decision made, but they passed all the tests with flying colors, and now it's, as we said, it's about going forward. So we'll see.
When I was kind of drawn through all this mentally, I wanted to put myself in 3 different positions. What's the view of the front office? What's the view of the players? What's the view of my own self? What do I view it as? I'm not going to call myself a fan, but an observer of this, because I'm not an Anaheim Ducks fan. I'm glad that we have Zach and Thomas covering the Ducks because they can be unbiased reporters. I have a favorite hockey team that is not the Anaheim Ducks, so it works. Front office perspective, Zach, you hit it. Second winningest coach of all time, 3-time Stanley Cup winner, friend of the general manager. it makes perfect sense. This is the absolute greatest hire you could make, right? And Jack, you mentioned it. For the system, for everything that's going on, this is a great guy. I thought about the player's perspective, the distraction case of what this could be. There is a distraction scenario, and some players are going to feel it more than others. Some players may have a strong opinion about Joel when he was with Chicago and the events that occurred during that time. And then I thought about myself, and I thought about, without going into too much detail, this was a situation that happened across the street in Anaheim with Mickey Callaway. And I saw it firsthand. And, it took time to speak up about it. And it was other people, it was multiple people that weren't speaking about it, but they knew about what was going on to at least a small degree. They were seeing the text messages sent to female reporters. They were seeing the invites to dinner when he was coming through with Cleveland, things like that. And I thought, there needs to be a louder voice against sexual assault, those that are being sexually assaulted, whether by verbal or physical, especially physical, but, whatever the situation is. And I'm not going to sit here and ride a high horse saying that Joel Quenneville is a bad person because he didn't say anything or he wanted to put his hockey team. I don't think anyone's all that great, in all honesty. When you get to those positions, it's not a great spot to be in. So I think as a hockey sense, it's great. But in all honesty, I do struggle with it. I do struggle with the fact that Joel Quenneville is hired, that Kyle Beach had to go through what he did, and that Aldrich is still assaulting kids. Maybe not today, but recently he's still assaulting kids. And I think I had a friend of mine, Abby Mastracco. She covers the Mets for the New York Daily News. She put it perfectly. Hiring Joel Quenneville while hockey culture is basically on trial, and while there's a literal trial going on in Canada about hockey players and sexual assault, is sadly very on brand for the NHL and for hockey. And that's sad and it's true. She mentioned the Ducks are usually better than this, and that's a big point. Is you want to trust what Henry Samueli is saying, and Thomas, I know you mentioned that. You want to trust Henry Samueli because he is one of the most respected owners, not only in hockey, but in sports. And but definitely, I lean to the side that is going to struggle with this, with the fact that Joel Quenneville does have a job in the NHL, and that, yeah. So, but you hit on all avenues. Looking at this as a hockey sense, if this fails, the accountability on Pat Verbeek, the accountability on Joel Quenneville, how quick is the trigger? How fast do they pull the trigger if this fails? Jack, go to you.
It's tough to say just because I don't know. Like I really want to know what's going on in the Samueli's heads in terms of their level of patience with this, because I feel like that's going to determine everything. If the Ducks get off to a slow start, but then they start picking it back up in January, I think his job's safe. But if we're looking at approaching February, March, and the Ducks are still not really seeing the strides that they were expecting, I could see a move already being made after the end of the season. Although, to counter myself, Henry Samueli said that they put a lot of money into this, and they didn't cheap out on his contract. So would they be willing to ditch it from the start? That's going to be tough to say, because I don't know where their priorities are at right now. So I don't know. I think if they struggle next year, he might be gone at the end of the year.
Thomas, any differing thoughts?
Performance-wise of the team, I think he'll be given as fair of a shot as anybody. Just kind of depends what kind of moves they make during the off season, if they actually are able to add anybody. How do people play out? How do prospects develop and go forward in the season? I wouldn't say that one bad season would probably get him fired. Now, any sort of negative allegation, yeah, I think guy is gone immediately, and GM was with him.
We agree. And just real quick before I get to you, Zach, on this, Greg Cronin was on NHL Network when the hiring was announced. Zach, I love that. I thought Greg, but Greg, was so respectful, said
Yes.
great things about the Samuelis,
Mm-hmm.
said it's a great situation to be going into. So I want to give an attaboy to Greg Cronin for not only his response to it, but an immediate response on live air. So good on you, Greg.
He did slip up and say the team that we have they have. It was like, well, yeah, it's only been a couple weeks.
Your thoughts?
And didn't he forget Isaac Lundstrom's name too?
Yeah, he called Lundstrom Lindholm at some point.
Yeah.
It's like, well, he played. One guy played for you longer, but yeah, the Cronin thing was kind of funny. Just. And to be fair, he did a podcast a week ago, and I listened to the whole thing, and really not worth listening to on the whole. But he has been very complimentary and respectful. Like, for as shocked as he supposedly was when he got fired, there doesn't seem to be any bad blood, which is either a testament to him or a testament to everybody involved that they're kind of just taking that in stride. As far as the leash on Quenneville, look, there will be that is an incomplete question, I think, until I think we need to see what happens in July. Come July 1st, Samueli said that they don't have to pinch pennies anymore. They will have the budget. If Eric Stevens even asked, like, does that mean spending to the cap as it continues to rise? And Samueli said, if need be, then that's what we will do. But we're not going to write stupid checks, he said. But Pat Verbeek has been given all the leeway to go do what he needs to do to make this team a contender again. And that includes hiring Verbeek or hiring Quenneville. And there was, when Mike Sullivan was out there was like, oh, are the Ducks going to get him for a second? And everybody's like, well, he wants to be the highest paid coach in the league, and the Ducks don't pay for coaches. So I kind of think Samueli heard that and said, oh, I don't? Let me put my money where my mouth is and get this guy right here. And because of the money that's involved, because of the money that is going to, in theory, be put into the team in general, I think they have to sort of commit to at least, at minimum, a full season. And I would even say that he gets into a year 2. The danger with all of it, of course, is there are teams that have done the rebuild in the same time frame that the Ducks have done and haven't gotten any better for it. Like the Detroit Red Wings, who were a point out of the playoffs last year, and they thought, oh, well, this year we're definitely going to be a playoff team, and then fell short. So the Ducks are like, oh, we made a 21-point improvement, and hey, we were only, they end up like 15 points out or 10 points out, and if we improve by 10 points, Joel Quenneville can get us 10 points. Some guy we signed in the offseason can get us 10 points. We'll certainly be in the playoffs. It's like, well, maybe you don't. And then at what point does it become this death spiral where you are the Detroit Red Wings in the failing Yzer plan? Are you, God forbid, you become the Buffalo Sabres and just might as well relegate yourself to Europe or something? But I think just there's too much investment to cut the cord quickly. And there's also so much investment that there, as Samuel said, there is a ton more pressure on everybody involved. Pat, Joel, everybody. They gotta make it work. So it's kind of, I know it's a little conflicting of like, there's a lot of pressure. They need to get this done, but I also think they're going to give them a little bit of time just based on how much they've invested. So,
well, you were taking part of. I've got my script right in front of me, and it's you just went across the whole script. But it's, in reality, the Anaheim Ducks have been in the rebuild, right? They've been in this consistent rebuild. It's lasted about half a decade at this point. Next year, 2025-26, that's supposed to be the year, right? I mean, that's when you start seeing your window. So realistically, if they don't make the playoffs next year through this entire rebuild, I would call that close to a failure. We're going to talk about that with the Angels later in the episode, but that seems – I know that it's only 1 year. I know it's Joel Quenneville. You've got to adapt, but the Anaheim Ducks have done this. The rebuild is at the point of we're moving past the rebuild. Our kids are coming in. They're going to play hard. They're going to come here to win. Am I wrong on that? I don't know if I'm wrong on that, but like from a hockey perspective, Joel Quenneville is acquiring what should be a playoff team in my perspective.
And another thing too is like, we don't know how the fan response is going to be next year. We don't know, like, because people have voiced their displeasures on social media, rightfully so, and people have said they're not renewing their season ticket plans. How many of them are doing this? Because we can see it on social media, but I know there's a lot of season ticket holders that aren't as vocal on social media. How many, like, how big is the drop off going to be in fan interest in this team next year, especially if they struggle, if they miss the playoffs and the attendance is down and they're losing money and not as many people are buying merchandise? I could see that being a factor in cutting the cord early.
No, real quick, Zach, can I ask you something? Because as a part of Jack's counter here, your grandparents have season tickets, or your parents have someone in your family has season
grandparents.
tickets?
Yep. Since
What is
'93.
What was their reaction?
I told my grandfather, and he was like, "Oh, that's great." And I was like, "Yeah, but," he's like,
Okay.
"What's your problem with him?" I'm like, "Do you not know?"
So a little
Like,
different. So a little different.
he's also 80, so
Yeah.
I don't think some of that stuff plays into him. And my grandmother, who has been going to the games in my stead, over the last season, she was like, "Who? What? I don't know who that is." I'm like, "Okay, well, then you're not
That's fine.
here."
No, okay, so my point's moot.
Yeah,
And also,
but like
the one
when
thing
it comes,
you forget, the not Bally Sports, but what's the TV? The TV deal
Victory.
is
FanDuel or Victory,
Victor's
yeah.
going to counterbalance quite a bit of that. But sorry, Zach, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that in kind of bouncing off what Jack said about the social media, it's funny because I make sure to post my stuff wherever I can, and I go to all the Ducks fan groups to post this stuff. Twitter has one set of opinions, and it leans a percentage one direction. Facebook has been a different story, where it's a bit more positive to mixed, where Twitter is certainly negative to mixed, and Instagram is just mixed. Like there's no consensus on what's going on in the Ducks comment sections on Instagram. So I don't know when it comes to like what the reality is, because we don't talk to people in public anymore. So
And that's my point. We're going to find out with
right.
the attendance.
I was kind of interested. Like I put out when the press conference was happening on Twitter, and I was curious if like, is anybody going to like show up to protest or anything? And I think in a bigger market, maybe that would have happened. Honestly, what we're going to end up seeing if you go to Honda Center next year, if you went to anybody that went to the Kings playoff games, and I guess they had done this in San Jose too, there is like an advocacy group of some sort that, in the same vein as the people that hold up the "Jesus will come for you" signs at some of these public events, there was like a crowd of people holding signs and marching in a circle with pictures of certain players. For the Oilers, it was Evander Kane, and Corey Perry, saying that, oh, abuser, cheater, and like kind of rallying against some of the hockey culture and the abusers and things like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of those people ended up showing up at Ducks games. I'm also going to be very curious what Joel Quenneville's first game back in Chicago looks like, because obviously with Florida, he didn't get a chance to go back to Chicago after the report came out. So curious how that plays out. Yeah, all of this is a we'll see. And I think the other one point, and then I'll close off on that. When we're talking about like how long the rebuild has been, I wouldn't say it's been the full 5 years, because that's including the Bob Murray time where they were still trying to limp along desperately with the last gasps of Ryan Getzlaf and such. It wasn't until Verbeek came in and they actually started to tear down the walls in February of 22, that they went rock bottom, and now we're on the way back up. But I really think when it comes to like a drafting perspective and everything except the coaching hire has been the right moves in terms of building. They're on the way up. The only things they've really missed out on are the free agents. And honestly, the free agents they missed out on last year might have been for the best, based on how Stamkos and Marchessault played for the Predators and how the Predators fared this year. So we'll see what July comes. If Mitch Marner is an Anaheim Duck, or Nikolai Ehlers, or Brock Besser, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and going back to what Henry Samueli said about we don't have to penny pinch. We'll sign the big contracts if we have to. That it doesn't really mean anything to me, just because you look at last year, like Zach alluded to, with the guys that they tried to go after and didn't sign. They offered more money and more term to Stamkos and Marchessault, and they declined and signed for a cheaper deal.
Yeah.
Not that it's cheap, but you know what I mean. Less money to go to Nashville. Obviously didn't work out, but still, like, teams want to go to players want to go to a team that's going to win. And the I almost said the Angels. The Ducks have proved that they aren't proven winners. So add that in. I don't know how much Joel Quenneville is going to sway free agents one way or another. That remains to be seen. And I don't think any player is going to openly say, I want to sign because I want to play for him, or I don't want to sign because I don't want to play for him. I don't know if we're going to get those answers, but you have to assume that it's going to have an impact on some people.
I would say, based on talking to the three players they had, mostly what Vetrano said, and then what Strome said. Vetrano says he loves the guy. He's been an advocate for him, he said. Best coach he ever had, he said. Ryan Strome said that his phone never rings, but he got 10 to 15 phone calls of people, former players of Quenneville's, being like, oh, this guy's great. You're going to love him. He's great. It's players seem to want to play for the guy. And I do think having Joel Quenneville instead of Greg Cronin, 3-time Stanley Cup champion versus Spit and Chicklets punching bag, that does play some sort of role in guys will want to come here, especially if the team's on the rise and they have Joel Quenneville and they can pay me more money than I'm worth elsewhere because they have the cap room and an owner that's willing to drop some coin. Sure, I'll show up. I do think it'll have quite a bit of play. Now, whether that means they get the Mitch Marners or if they get some older player, like there is the thought that was put out that, well, Jonathan Taves wants to come back to the NHL. It's like, no thanks.
37 years old. Yeah, no.
No. But hey, maybe they can get Corey Perry back or something. Who knows?
I think you guys read the script right off the text group. Samuel mentioned, Henry mentioned that they're going to spend more. There's going to be a big summer for them, spending wise, at least to the comment degree. And I was going to ask whether or not do you guys think Joel Quenneville is going to help or make it worse when it comes to free agents. Thomas, you're the only one I think that hasn't shared a thought on this yet. What are your thoughts? Do you think that Joel Quenneville is going to bring in free agents? Do you think it's going to be an issue? And when it comes to spending, what Mitch Marner is probably going to look for $12, $13 million a year, 7-8 years, something like that. Do you think that Anaheim is a potential landing spot for Mitch Marner?
I mean, here's the thing. When I saw the signing, I was like, ooh, I don't know how this will work out. But then, I saw Zach's interviews yesterday. I saw him talk to Vetrano, and that was the one thing that kind of just stood out to me, was just saying, okay, hey, somebody has got his back, and clearly players actually do want to play for him. So, I mean, I think that could actually potentially lure in some free agents, especially just because of his resume, his track record. He's a proven winner. So, I mean, maybe I think some guys will actually end up wanting to come play for Anaheim and potentially play for a winner. I don't see why you wouldn't want to be out here, aside from like the Quenneville hiring great area.
Well, says you.
Oh,
Yes,
I love it.
I will say, because I've had conversations with friends who are also into hockey, how much more does a team like the Ducks, who aren't a proven winner and are in a high tax state, how much do they need to overpay guys to come in? That's definitely going to be a factor. I think those two things are definitely going to be a factor into this. So you're looking at maybe $2 to $4 million extra AAV on contracts to reel in guys that could sign for. I can't think of a good comp, but a team that's a proven winner, not in a high tax state, they're gonna get more bang for their buck if they sign elsewhere.
Steven Stamkos in Tennessee.
Yeah.
I mean,
The Dallas Stars.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
There's your example. Yeah.
I mean, we're almost in an hour talking about this, guys. I
It's the
think
biggest story in the
content-
sport.
It is.
Besides
It
besides
really
the
is.
playoffs, it was the biggest thing in the hockey world yesterday, which was
And especially
Yeah, it's
wild.
big news.
You
Especially
don't
in
think
Orange
Marco
County.
Sturm having interest in the Vancouver Canucks job is
Yeah, Taylor.
big news?
Marco Sturm? Vancouver? He's your
on,
guy,
Taylor.
right?
Do we want to go for another hour? I don't know how many ways I can say hell no, but yeah.
I got all day, Taylor.
Yeah, I'm
Preach.
gonna go big freaking skip on that one. Any last thoughts on Joel Quenneville? We're gonna talk Angels here. Move on to Angels. Any last thoughts here? Joel Quenneville, Anaheim Ducks.
The mustache is impressive in person. I've seen it from afar all those years. The mythical Coach Q and his, comb of a facial hair situation, but it's well maintained.
My final thought is not necessarily just about Quenneville, but kind of a message to like the fans. Like, I see people arguing all the time on Twitter of how other people should feel about it. I feel like everybody's thoughts are kind of justified for the most part, as long as you're not being an a-hole about it. A lot of people aren't going to like this and are never going to get over this. A lot of people are fine with this, and they can look at they can look at it as purely a hockey move, and I think to an extent both sides can be seen.
We've got 4 people here that shared 4 different opinions, and none of us called each other names. None of us. We all sat here doing it, and you can do
In
it
public, at least.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Once we stop recording, though.
No, I agree with Jack there too. Just to put a point on it, that everyone is allowed to feel how they're gonna feel about this. Like I said, I wasn't trying to change anybody's mind. I feel like I've been assuaged a little bit of like, okay, they've done the work, and now it's up to them to finish it, and it's also up to myself, Thomas, Derek, Eric, everybody in the Ducks media corps to hold them accountable to these things. And assuming we're still doing this in October, there will be the questions asked. And not only are the questions asked, they need to make sure they do it public facing. And, people will, but then the people that are mad about it will call it, oh, it's performative, it's whatever. Trust me, as the person that's been posting this stuff all day yesterday, I have gotten the overwhelmingly like, what do you mean? He's just a hockey guy. What are you're going to get mad about this guy doing? It's the player's fault or whatever. Some really disgusting stuff in some of the comments yesterday. And then there's the other side of it, like, this guy should never work again. He should be put to the guillotine, like, send him out to sea. And it's like, okay, there are plenty of people in the middle that are just sort of confused about what to think. And to all those people, I hope you find some sort of answers, that the team provides you answers, because as we all know, sports, the only reason I have jobs in this industry is because there's fans who put their time, energy, emotion, money into these endeavors, and they want to feel that they're being given back to by that organization, whether it's by winning or just by good feelings. And this has put a lot of people in a weird spot about how they feel about that. And I think everybody's allowed to feel how they want to feel about it. And we'll see how it plays out to either make you feel better about it or not, or just to make you accept it, I guess, at the very least. Or if it, turns you against the whole endeavor forever. But everybody's right to have their opinion, and I don't think anybody should be demonized for that, especially with how sensitive all this stuff is with those situations.
The Los Angeles Angels, let's cross the street here. We're going to cross Katella, go over to Angel Stadium. One big issue right now with the Angels, I'm staring at it right now, 3 outings, 1 batter retired, 12 runs allowed. Reid Detmers. Yeah. What? I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I've been a firm believer that the Angels organization goes with how good Reid Detmers plays, because I think Reid Detmers is actually one of the most important players in the organization. And I can dive into it a little bit more. But Jack, what are your thoughts? What should the Angels be doing with Reid Detmers?
It's tough to say, just because, to be frank, I don't have confidence in the organization to turn him around or to develop pitching in general. They don't have a good track record of developing pitchers, or I mean anybody for that matter, the last 15 years. Because you look at the young guys that are having success, it was the guys who spent the least amount of time in the minor leagues, and those are all hitters. Just furthering my point in developing pitchers, I mean, how many guys have you seen the last 5 to 10 years that have came into this team and they weren't good with the team, they leave Anaheim and they find success elsewhere? I mean, the first name that pops in my head was Jose Quintana, and I looked it up before this. He had a career 3.73 ERA heading into his Angels tenure. He had almost a 7 ERA as an Angel, and he's had a 3.35 ERA in 81 starts since leaving the Angels. So, like, I'm not sure the Angels know what to do with him. I mean, you also look at guys like Griffin Canning that have left and are having immediate success elsewhere. It sucks because, like you said, Taylor, he's a very important pitcher to this organization. And when he was going good in that stretch in 2022, he's a lot of fun to watch pitch. And it's just a shame that he hasn't been able to figure out, the team hasn't been able to figure it out. It's disappointing. And I wouldn't be surprised if down the road, if they move on from him and he goes elsewhere and he finds success.
Yeah, I think I agree and disagree with you on the development thing. I think they develop pitchers very well en route to the majors. I think they do a horrible job developing in the majors.
Fair.
Continuing development in the
Fair.
majors. You mentioned Jose Quintana, because I think Jose Soriano is one. You mentioned guys. I think Jaime Barria was a case that get Jaime Barria to the majors. Jose Suarez was great during development. Griffin Canning, Reid Detmers, Caden Dana, all during development, just outstanding. Incredible growth, incredible pitchers. Getting to the majors, it's not as great. And Jose Soriano has been good. I'll give Jose Soriano that, but it's been a struggle developing at the major league level. Thomas, what are your thoughts here? Reid Detmers.
Yeah. I mean, I want to believe in Detmers. I think it's might be a little too early to kind of tell right now on the season, just because he's been a reliever, and then I know they've been kind of using him a little bit more in these high leverage situations for some reason. I mean, really, you look at his last 3 starts have just been super rough, or not starts, but last 3 appearances have just been super rough. ERA was a 2.57 and then skyrocketed to a 10.05 at the game you were at the other day, Jack, when he gave up 3 runs. So I mean, it's tough. I think maybe just kind of roll with the punches. That's not to say I wouldn't rule out, though, the possibility of maybe, if you can, pull off a trade of some sort if they think there's value there. If another team is willing to bite on it and take a shot on Detmers, and you might be able to get something just as valuable in return. But you guys are right. Just when young pitchers reach the majors with this team, it's hard to see. It's always hard for them to just kind of continue the success they've had in the minors. And Griffin Canning's the prime example right now. 5-1 record with the Mets, 2.5 ERA, 37 strikeouts, a WHIP of 1.39. And I've read that all they kind of told him was just, hey man, why don't you stop throwing a little less fastballs and just use your slider more? And it's been paying off for him.
That's the biggest thing I saw with Reid. He has thrown, based on Baseball Savant's metrics, he has thrown 1 changeup all year long. 1. For a guy, I know that he's in relief, so you don't necessarily need that 4th pitch, but you need a changeup against lefties, or against righties if you're a lefty thrower. I look at the metrics here, and we have the metrics in front of us. His curveball, his changeup, his sinker all got hit atrociously last year. The years before, though, they were great on him. And that's the thing. A lot of what the organization is saying is that it's a mental thing with Reid, which is fine. That's true. And Reid is probably one of the ones that would tell you, too, is that mentally he has to get right. But pitch usage, you only throw 1 changeup all year long, that's an issue. That's a serious issue. So I think, you have to find a way to look at these metrics that, yeah, maybe his curveball got hit last year. Maybe his changeup got hit last year. But that doesn't mean you just erase it entirely. His curveball usage down to well, actually, now looking at his curveball usage is up, but his fastball usage is up to way above. It's over 10% above a career high this year. I just don't comprehend where Griffin Canning was always a guy that was pretty much a two-pitch guy. He never really had that changeup, right? The changeup was a UCLA. It was a John Savage changeup, and there's a reason why UCLA doesn't like me because I call it a John Savage changeup. It's awful. UCLA cannot do changeups, and it never grows out of it. But Griffin Canning is a guy that would be perfect for relief. And we look at, if you look at his second time through the order kind of thing, his third time through the order, that's where it gets real bad for Griffin Canning. But you alter the pitch usage. You don't alter the pitcher. You just alter what he's doing a little bit. I think that's all that has to be going on with Reid is alter a little bit, get him right in the head. But Thomas, you mentioned it. His trade value right now is probably minimal. There might not even be any trade value at this point. But all it takes is one organization to say, hey, we'll give you some kid in Arizona for Reid Detmers, right? Let's just get him off your roster. He's been awful for you this year. Change him, and this is a guy that could go win a Cy Young Award. I genuinely, I've said that, and maybe I'm out of my mind for saying it, but I've said it since he made the major league roster. I've said, this guy is, you don't throw the word ace around. Every team has a ace, but that does not mean that there are 30 aces out there. There's about 7, 8 true aces in baseball. I was a firm believer after year one that Reid Detmers could have been an ace. I still think he can be. I think the other thing right now, you have him in a situation he's never been in. He has only ever started games. You have him in relief. And as much as I think, Jack, you and I talked about this off record, but we said, Jack Kahanowitz, right? Give him the job until he starts, because he was the best run prevention pitcher the Angels had for a while. But when he starts giving up runs, you have an option to send him down, and you open up a rotation spot. Do it. Jack has not been good this year. It's plain and simple. Jack has not limited runs. He's allowing runs. So make the switch. And I know that's hard because you haven't stretched Reid out. I mean, like we said, only one batter retired in the last 3 outings. I don't know. Am I crazy for thinking that Angels are doing Reid Detmers a disservice, which is doing themselves a disservice with not having him in the rotation and also not adjusting themselves to what he can be?
Yeah, at this point, I don't really care what level it is, whether it be AAA or the majors. Like, he needs to be starting games because he's a starting pitcher. I understand they want him to be getting major league reps and facing major league hitters, but I think it's going to be more important for him to be starting games no matter what level it is. And obviously, there's the Jack Kahanowitz of it all, and I know he had a great start his last time around, and he starts again tonight. We'll see, but Kyle Hendricks hasn't been good. Not that the expectation was for him to be good, but obviously it's another guy that struggled on the mound. Detmers needs to be starting games, plain and simple. And going back to what you were saying about him winning a Cy Young somewhere, we were on the phone the other day, Taylor, and I made the joke that, I can't wait to see Reid Detmers win a Cy Young with the Brewers in a few years. You're not crazy to think that.
He's that good. And I'm the first person who's going to say, I love prospects. Prospects are my thing. There's no such thing as a prospect that's going to be a future ace. Now, maybe Paul Skeens, right? Maybe Paul Skeens is the one example. But, Chase Burns is, I'm assuming off the top of my head, Chase Burns is the top pitching prospect in baseball. Or at least among. I would not throw an ace caliber comment on Chase Burns. And that's the number 2 overall pick from last year. So, there are very few. As much as I love Seth Hernandez, I absolutely love Seth Hernandez at Corona, high school pitcher. He's a rotation arm, and I think he's a good rotation arm, but I would not throw ace down just yet. Thomas, I cut you off. Sorry. What were you going with?
No. I was just gonna kind of go back to what you and Jack were both saying. No, I agree with you, Taylor. I wouldn't ship him off for necessarily a random kid out of Arizona or just something like that. I mean, like I said, if the value is that it would be, if the value were theoretically high, if somebody would be willing to buy in and trade, even just a prospect at a decent value, then I would do the trade. But No, I agree with you. I mean, I think he is an ace caliber pitcher. You're not the first person to say that. I mean, I've always heard Gooby say great things about Reid Detmers, big believer in him. We can even talk about Kershaw going up against Detmers in his first or second year, I believe. And, he said it too. He was like, this guy's going to be an ace. Curveball is just amazing for this dude. It's just been a rough start, rough go for him as of late. I don't really know what's kind of happened. He just kind of fell off out of nowhere. But I do agree that, Reid Detmers belongs in the rotation. Um, I was there the day they told us that Jack Kohanowicz was going to be taking that fifth spot in the rotation. It was the exhibition game against the Dodgers for the Freeway Series. And Detmers was definitely in a good mental space when that happened. He told us that he was looking forward to the role in the bullpen, thought it would be something that would be a lot of fun. And I feel like he still kind of had the same approach to it all season long. I read an article from Jeff Fletcher about a couple weeks ago or so. And, he checked in on Detmers and he said, like, this has been so much fun. Like, I've been having a great time out here in the bullpen. Initially, though, I knew once that they announced he was going to go to the bullpen, I'm like, there's going to be a day this season where Jack Kohanowicz and Reid Detmers both coexist in the bullpen, or I mean, in the starting rotation. And I mean, even alongside them, we can probably see Caden Dana in there at some point. Um, you know, Baseball, 162 games a year. It's a long season. Things happen. Whether somebody gets released, sent down, injuries, that's just going to be the reality of it. But I think Detmers does deserve to be in there. I think you have to kind of think about sending Kahanowicz down. I wouldn't say right now, but maybe another start or two and see how he does from there, and then make a decision.
Um, Part of this part is go back to 2021-22 and your perception of what Reid Detmers is going to be going into 2025-2026, and that's what we were talking about earlier in the show with the Anaheim Ducks. The Angels have been through multiple, not rebuilds, but reassessments because ownership will not let them rebuild. It's very well known.
You've been through something.
Well, it's very well known. Ownership will not
Yeah.
use the term rebuild. He will not let there
Yeah.
be a rebuild. So you got to rebuild on the fly, right? Billy Epler had to do it, and now Perry Minasian has to do it, right? Perry has to do this rebuild of a sense. You've given Perry, this is year 5, right, of his reassessment. You get the reset button from Billy, right? You start from zero essentially with Perry at the start. You're taking what Billy left you, and you're going and moving into, this is year 5, right, of Perry Minasian. I've said it for a long time. 2026 is the Angels' year to at least start looking at their window. We all mentioned our projections for the Angels this year, 70-something wins, right? It was all under 500. All of us said under 500. I think, Zach, you might have even said 68 wins. I don't know what it was, but it was.
I'm negative.
No, but it was whatever it was under 500. Next year, 2026, if you're mapping this out generally, 2025 for the Angels is what it should be for the Anaheim Ducks, right? Is what it was. You saw the growth of Leo, Cutter, Jackson. You saw that. This year with the Angels, all that matters is the growth of Nolan, Zach, Logan. Reid is a big one on my chart with that, right? Is all these young guys, watch them grow so that you can build a sustainable winning team starting in 2026. And I'm not talking about getting over 500. I'm talking about competing for a playoff spot in 2026. Are we at a point where we're talking about the same moves as we are with the Ducks? Zach, I'm going to throw something off record here. You were mentioning Greg Cronin being fired in December. You and I had that phone call, right? You and I had that phone call. We both had the article ready. And if I'm being honest, I sat there thinking about Pat Verbeek. When is Pat Verbeek going to get fired if there's no more growth? I love Perry. I think Perry's awesome. I think he's a good dude. It's not a personal thing. But Perry has had 5 years at this point to get to year 6, right? In year 5, where we're at right now, are we seeing the growth to where year 6 is going to be the window? And I can go to whoever wants to take it.
I mean, from your point, you are seeing the growth from Neto and Logan.
Yeah, well,
Just that those are the only two really. I mean, Nolan Shanwell, I haven't kept up with his stats, but he's had some better at bats as of late, but still not overly exciting. Let me pull it up right here. Shanwell, 256 average, 341 on base, 372 slug. So he's a league average bat all across the board, which you kind of want more from that from a first round pick, but
the one thing I'll say about that too, and this is something Nolan never had development. He's only developing now, right?
yeah,
If Nolan was on a standard track development, he might be in the majors this year, maybe.
yeah.
But I'm thinking he's in Double A.
And I feel like that kind of goes into the point about where the team is at more so than where Nolan Shanwell's at.
Yeah.
The team put him in the situation, not him. It's not like he was scorched earth in Double A and it was like they have to call this guy up. It was they have to call this guy up because they have no one else to play first base. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see if the offense still, well, I guess both sides of the ball continue to struggle this bad for how long, because there could be a lot of jobs in jeopardy at the end of this.
Yeah, it's very true. And I know that Perry's on 2 year, Ron's on the 1 year, and you know, I'm going to make some assumptions, which isn't fair at all. But I'm assuming that at the end of the year, the Angels are going to look at someone to start their window again. I don't know if that's going to be Ron. I don't think it will be Ron. I think it's going to be someone else that they bring in as the next manager. But with Perry, he's got the next year he's under contract still, but you have to see the growth, right? You have to see the growth because next year, what's your plan? You've got Logan behind the plate, you got Nolan at first, you got Christian Moore at second. That's the plan, right? I'm using the plan here. You've got Zach Neto at shortstop. You've got someone at third base. I don't know who it's going to be, but I'm assuming it's not going to be Anthony Rendon. I think his playing days are just about over. You still have a Mike Trout. You still have Taylor Ward. And you're going to have to find another outfielder. You're going to have to find I like Joe Adell. That's another one. Joe Adell has to grow, right? Joe Adell has to grow. Next year, the rotation, you got Jack Kahanowitz, Jose Soriano, Caden Dana, hopefully Reid Detmers, right? You've got Ryan Johnson, Ben Joyce, etc. in the bullpen. Next year, you're full of young, talented players. It's not like it's. I think that I was talking about it with someone else the other day. Tim McIlvain and Brian Parker, the scouting directors on the domestic and international side, I think they've done a great job at identifying talent and utilizing it. We've got to make the step, and it's going to be a young team that grows with this talent. You're going to add some veterans, probably not Kyle Hendricks, but Kyle Hendricks types. Yusei Kikuchi is going to be a part of this team as a veteran. I just think that the growth steps have to happen right now for this team to be what it's supposed to be next year. And if it doesn't, then sadly, you might have to hit the reset button again. So, Thomas, what are your thoughts, man?
It's tough because you make a good point that there's a lot of young guys that should be stepping up next year. One question that kind of comes to my mind is I don't really know if the Angels will be competitive next year. That's just the reality. Aside from prospects, development, all that, you still have one more year of Anthony Rendon, and like what I predict is he's probably going to get released this offseason.
Yeah.
That's just my prediction. He's out for the rest of this year. Eat up the contract. Let him, he's basically forced him into retirement. I think that's what's going to happen. With that being said, I don't know if the Angels will be able to go out and get another big time player. Just because you're eating on Rendon's contract for the year. You take another season to kind of look at where you are as an organization. Also, potentially next year would be the last year of Perry's contract. One thing that I'm looking at too with this team is that this year, after this season, Ron Washington's contract expires. So you also kind of have to look at him this season and what has he done to improve this team and go from there. I know there's been a lot of people calling out for the Angels to move on from their hitting coach, Johnny Washington. If the offense continues to struggle the way it has, I mean, something's got to be done at some point. before June. Yesterday they made the switch on the base paths to move Bo Porter and Eric Young Sr. So, I mean, there was that. Decent base running in yesterday's game. I'll give them that. But, yeah, I don't know if next year really is a window for them to be competitive just because, it's looking like another development year, if I'm being honest with you.
And so based on what you're saying, with that being the case,
Yeah.
does Perry get that the year after that, 27? Because I think you've given this group 5 years, right? You've given them 5 years, and that's fine. I'm a firm believer in patience in building. The Anaheim Ducks, right? Patience in building, everything like that. My anticipation for the Anaheim Ducks: go be a playoff team and at least make some noise next year, right? When it comes to the Anaheim Angels, the Los Angeles Angels, next year, go make some noise.
You said it right. You're fine.
Shut up. Zach, we have not gotten your thoughts on the Angels. I know that the reason why I went to Jack and Thomas is they cover the Angels for us here at the Sporting Tribune and with Wings on Katella. Zach, you do the Ducks, but I know you're familiar at least with what's going on across the street too.
Yeah. You say the Angels are building. Are they? Every one of the last, 3, 4, 5 seasons feels like it's gone the exact same way of, hey, look at that promising start. They're turning it around, these guys. They got it figured out. Oh, what was that? They lost 12 of 13. Oh, well, see you next year. I think I said this on the now lost episode, but I don't blame Perry.
No.
I don't blame Ron. I don't blame the players, really. I honestly, if there's any part of the Angels organization below the top level, I would question what the training staff situation is like, with how often Trout gets injured or guys get injured and they take too long to recover. But I just don't think this team is in any. I have no reason to be optimistic about this team as long as Artie Moreno is in charge of pushing the buttons. And
if he came out and said, say this doesn't work, right? Say this is 100%, this doesn't work, and 2026 is a bust, 2025 is a bust, and Artie Moreno comes out and says, we're rebuilding. Does it change your opinion? Does it change your opinion? Because in all honesty, the only thing missing from this club, the thing that this team has needed for the last 10 years is a rebuild. I know you have Mike Trout. I know you have Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
But when Shohei leaves, you need a rebuild. Reset, right?
Well, whenever they had Shohei and Mike, they didn't have anything else. So they still had to build, and they didn't do it. Having great players doesn't mean anything. The fact that what is the Angels minor league system ranked at right now? Do you know? Offhand?
Bottom 3, bottom 2, wherever you go.
The fact that you haven't been able to, if you're spending so much money on guys like Trout and Ohtani, or Rendon in this case, is kind of wasted money you've thrown away, and you haven't been able to sustainably build up anything of note below that, the organization is going to be in a tough spot for a very long time. And as much as Angels fans have loved having Mike Trout around, as much as Angel fans wanted to try to keep Shohei Ohtani at the time, I think the two decisions that may haunt this team there's 3 decisions that may haunt this team for another decade. It's not trading Ohtani before he left for LA, not trading Mike Trout earlier, because if you try to trade Mike Trout right now, you're not going to get nearly the haul, and is anybody really going to want to take on the contract at this point? And then the third one is already flip-flopping on whether he was going to sell the team or not. And with keeping Trout and Ohtani, that's how you rebuild your systems. All you have to do is look at the Texas Rangers, the Mark Teixeira, right? All the crap they got back from Mark Teixeira and what that team became, back-to-back World Series participant. That was the chance for the Angels to get out under this thing. As painful it would have been to lose two of the greatest players of all time, it's more painful to have the two greatest players of all time, not do a damn thing with them, and then submarine the franchise for a decade plus, almost 2 decades, if my prophecy were to come to fruition. So I know that I've been this like ever looming voice of negativism when it comes to the Angels.
No, you're not. No, it's a realism.
I do think it's real. Like I've experienced it. It's just like,
I'll just
what
go
are you
with
gonna
this.
do?
I have covered this team for 14 years, right? And everyone's like, "Oh, he's so positive. He's so positive." It's like, no, I'm realistic about crap, man. Like, I'm tired of being called Mr. Positive. It's like, no, like, it's not that I'm being negative. It's the reality is the Angels' secondary rebuild after Billy Epler has now hit year 5. You have to see the fruition of it.
I just don't think that there's any fruition to be had.
How are you supposed to grow as a team when, for the most part, every offseason is rinse and repeat the same year? You bring in a bunch of aging veterans on 1 or 2 year deals, and then you ship them at the trade deadline because you're out of contention. It's just rinse and repeat every year.
And the only time that they did try to do anything at the trade deadline, they cut all those guys a month later.
Because then they went on an immediate losing streak, and then they had to get below the luxury tax, or else Artie Moreno would spend an extra $2 million.
Yeah,
for development too.
We keep comparing the Ducks and the Angels. For all the losing the Ducks did over the last 3 years, there was still the signs of hope of like, hey, look at Leo Carlson. Hey, look at Olin Zellweger. Hey, this Lucas Dostal kid, he might be able to be the next, number 1 guy in net. And you could see these little bits kind of like building despite the losing, despite all the Cronin stuff, despite, all of it. That's why you're able to sell this team as, no, they're on the rise. With the Angels, there isn't. I mean, I remember being excited when Joe Adell was coming up, and Joe Adell just has not been close to what he was advertised as.
And that's why they're where they're at. Is you look back, even all the way back to Jerry's days, right? Josh Hamilton, Albert Pujols, etc. Right?
Yep.
Jerry Dipoto, over his 6 years or whatever it is, had 3 picks in the top 100 picks. Sean Newcomb, Taylor Ward, C.J. Cron. That's it. I think
Taylor Ward seems like a good pick.
Well, I'm a little, I like the guy.
Yeah.
Thomas, you take over this.
Yeah. You know what? I just want to add one thing to what you guys are saying. Not that I don't agree that the Angels should have traded Ohtani. I really do. I think you should have shipped them off to Baltimore, got Jackson Holiday and a couple names, and rolled with that. The one thing I will say in baseball, one thing I will just say in baseball is, like, we have seen it in the past where teams trade their best player and then it doesn't pan out. And a team that comes to mind right now is the Rockies, who have like 6 wins on the year.
Well,
that's none of those guys worked out.
But the Angels are just as bad as the Rockies. They
no,
keeping
they're
those
not.
guys. So
the Rockies are at a rough
no,
point.
yeah. I mean, record wise.
Either way,
I was saying that I would have traded Ohtani to Baltimore for
I would have
Holiday and a couple names, and I would have pulled the trigger on Trout. And now it's even harder with Trout because not only is he just regressed significantly and can't stay on the field and the contract and everything, he also has a no trade clause, and you have to convince him to get traded. And then if he does want to get traded, he will have a list of suitors that he wants to go to. It's the same struggle that St. Louis is having with Arenado now.
And also go back to the Ohtani thing. It was brought up that the Padres would have offered more
than what they did for
Soto.
Yeah, them too.
So imagine the Angels with,
well, and that goes
who was it all? James Wood, C.J. Abrams, Mackenzie Gore, plus more.
Whose fault is that, though? And that's where, Zach, you came into it. That's not a Perry issue.
That's
Perry
Artie.
is doing what his Perry's just doing what he's told when it comes to the job, right?
Yeah. No, Artie Moreno is saying, "Oh, Shohei, we're going to make a push for you here," and then, "Oh, actually, you're only worth $350 million, so we're going to lowball you." Like,
well,
it's insulting. It's insulting to him. I think it's insulting to the fan base that
fair.
You can play with this thing for as long as you have, and then. When it comes to Moreno, not to mention all the stuff with the stadium and the parking lot, and again, you just look across the street, and Henry Samueli just announced $1 billion into the arena itself, not to mention the $4 billion that they're putting into OC Vibe surrounding it. And Artie Moreno could only dream to have that concept art of a ballpark village that was put out all those years ago. Even
Nice.
Yeah. being dug upon.
Going to Jackson.
I was reading an article. Sorry about that. I was reading an article real quick earlier this week. Bill Shaken wrote for the LA Times, and it was Ohtani said it was about his endorsements and everything. And then he said that they gave the Angels the same offer for $700 million, $680 deferred over 10 years. And in that article, it says that the value of Ohtani's contract, the dollar, would have actually gone down to about being worth $460 million once the deferments kicked in. So it just kind of says a lot about what the Angels, and should they have done that deal at the time. And then just one more thing real quick on Perry. I think this year is going to be the most important year for him as a general manager, because I did forget that the Angels do have, what I believe, 4 picks in the top 100 of this year's draft.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I know they like to try to get guys that are going to be immediate contributors. Maybe they get one, but just seeing how the other 3 prospects kind of develop in this year's draft and
that's the thing. Perry might not be able to see the development of these guys because he might not be in office. But Jack, going back to your point about signing veterans, it's because you didn't have the depth that came from your draft classes. When it comes to Jerry, I know we're 10 years past that, but still, what are you getting from Jerry? Nothing. You got Taylor Ward. Good on you, right? CJ Cron, whatever it was. You didn't get any of the other draft picks. When it comes to Billy, Jordan Adams didn't work out. Joe Adell is what Joe Adell is at this point. Will Wilson maybe made the majors with Cleveland by this point.
He debuted like 3 weeks ago.
Good on him. Will Wilson, right? Reid Detmers was the last one of those guys, I think. I might be missing. Oh, Matt Theis is the other one, right? You go, Matt.
Yeah.
You weren't productive at the top of the draft. That's something you have to figure for why you have to bring in these veterans, because you just didn't have it for 5 years. You weren't productive enough to maintain a roster. And that's where I will hand it to Perry and, like I said, Tim McIlvain, Brian Parker, Zach Neto. I know Logan O'Hoppe was a trade, but go for pro scouting. Congrats pro scouting on that one. You got Nolan Shonwell. I know Nolan's not a prototypical first baseman, but you have a major league first baseman over there hitting at an average. I think you've done what you needed to do to start getting to year 6 of your build.
Last winter I got bored and wanted to look at, because the Angels had that insane 2009 draft where they had Trout, Skaggs, Richards, Patrick Corbin, Randall Grichuk in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
And I wanted to look at how their drafting has been since. So from 2010 to 2024, I did this last winter. Yeah, 2024. 2023. It was 2023. They have the lowest amount of WAR among drafted players in the entire MLB.
Yeah.
And it wasn't particularly close.
Is it David Eckstein as the most successful draftee?
No, this is from 2010.
Not David Eckstein. David Fletcher?
No. He's not even close.
Was it Jared Walsh?
No. I'll give you a hint. He never played a game for the Angels.
Mike Clevenger?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like 14.7 WAR when I checked.
Well, there was a reason for that trade, and it's because of all the things that came out about Mike in the last 3 years. Yeah, but either way.
Yeah, for 2 months of Vinny Pastano. But among the Angels, if you're curious, among the players that did actually play for the Angels, Cole Calhoun led. Okay. But yeah, it just goes to show you, like, this team hasn't been good at drafting the last 15 years. And you can argue they're better now just because they got, Shanwell and Neto. But what are the rounds 2 through 20 looking like now? You look at the 2021 draft, all pitchers. How many of those guys have worked out?
Yeah, and you get Sam, who's hurt, right? Kai Busch gets traded.
Silseth hasn't figured it out.
Injuries and other things. That is a guy that you got to get going too. That is a guy you got to get going. But you know what? For being an 11th round pick, gun ho. Guys, we're at an hour and a half plus. I think we got to call a wrap on it at this point. I see Thomas. He's sweating. I can see the sweat.
Just getting warmed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding.
we have everybody in the pen. Can we call in a lefty or?
So let's go weekend plans / I've got 2 questions for you. We'll just go. Zach, what do you got going on this weekend? You said you something fun. You said something.
Pool day.
That's
yeah.
right, pool day.
Let's see. I'm not the in our group chat. There's one of our friends that like as soon as the temperature like gets near 80 degrees, he starts sending us screenshots of his weather app. Like, guys, can we think about this? Can we think about this? And it's like April, and we're like, brother, you gotta shut up. Like, this is not the time. And then finally, he's like, the skies have opened. It is 90 degrees. I'm declaring it pool day. And I'm like, fine. I've taken my extra long winter that I enjoy, all these foggy days. So I'll go to the pool, have a beer or two, and decompress from a very busy week on the hockey beat.
Attaboy. Thomas Murray, what do you got going on over the weekend, buddy?
Yeah. Gonna go to a party in the afternoon for
You're covering the
birthday,
Angels for
and
us on Sunday.
I am. I'm gonna be at Angel Stadium on Sunday, and I'm gonna try to see Thunderbolts tomorrow morning.
Give it a look. If you want to know my thoughts on Thunderbolts, you can find the A+Z Movie Review podcast on Instagram and all places where podcasts are sold.
Attaboy.
I'm gonna also shout out to people. Go see Sinners. That movie was great.
Big movie guy, huh?
Yeah, I love movies. Get the AMC pass.
Film.
Good way to stay cool.
Last movie I went to see in theaters was Twisters. Loved it. Really good movie.
That was a fun one.
Jack Janes, your weekend plans. I know what you're doing tonight and Saturday.
Yeah, I'll be at Angel Stadium covering the games today and tomorrow, which is Saturday. Sunday, just Mother's Day plans. I got brunch with some family, and then picking up my girlfriend from the airport in the afternoon, and then going to dinner with some other family members. So
Good
fun
on
day.
you, man. Good on you. I'm gonna go see Michigan State and USC tonight. Down your guys' way. They're playing in Irvine. Baby shower and TBD for Sunday. We'll find out. Unassuming of who is going to go ahead of said teams, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on who the Angels will take in the draft and also who the Ducks will take at number 10. Unassuming of who goes ahead of them. Zach Kavanaugh, you go first.
Oh, Jesus. I haven't done my draft research yet. Like, the fact that the Ducks got knocked down 2 spots. You know the Ducks have never won a draft lottery and have never picked number 1 overall in franchise history?
I did.
That's so I think in the last 5 years they've moved down 5 spots total.
Since 2019, they haven't moved up.
Yeah, they keep getting bumped down. It's incredible. And the fact that they got jumped by team, like the fact that being jumped by 2 teams was a lower percentage chance than actually winning the number 1 pick is something for that franchise. Last time they picked number 10 overall, they picked Pavel Minchikov, pretty good player. The
And time for that Nick Ritchie.
Was Nick Ritchie.
Sorry.
No. I talked to Alex Gilchrist yesterday about like draft plans, and he's like, yeah, for 10th overall, we're maybe not going to do as big of a deal in terms of like media as we would if we were higher. I'm like, hey, you never know, you could get the next Nick Ritchie, and then he gave me a look. But yeah, what's the Jack? You might know better than me. Who's Western Hockey League guy that people keep talking about for the Ducks? I'm sure you've watched like the Crash the Draft guys, right?
I have a name. Is it Roger McQueen?
Yeah, that's who I'm thinking of.
That's who I was going to pick too.
Yeah.
I'll lay out my reasons when I go, but yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
Roger McQueen for the Ducks, and then I think I keep saying Jace Laviolette for the Angels every time you ask. So, gig 'em, go Aggies.
Thomas Murray. Angels pick, Ducks pick. Who you got?
I haven't looked at anything for hockey draft, but maybe anyone out of Long Beach State. Let's go with that.
Anyone
If
from
someone
that
from Long
club
Beach,
team?
Wow.
if Long
From
Beach
the
State
club
gets
team.
drafted to the NHL, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, get a intramural kid.
Yeah,
Do
as
something with
the
that.
former broadcaster of Long Beach State hockey, shout out Lakewood Ice. Good stuff over there.
Oh my god.
As for Angels draft, I'm gonna say your boy Seth Hernandez falls number 1 to the Nationals,
Oh. I'll take
and
that, Seth.
we're gonna get a holiday in Anaheim.
All right. Jack Janes.
For Angels, I've been saying Jamie Arnold all year long, and I don't really feel like moving off of it. I will say Liam Doyle's picking up some traction because he's having a great year, but I still think I'd rather go Jamie Arnold. As with the Ducks, I said Roger McQueen. One, the name is sick. Two, before his injuries, he was projected to be top 3, top 5 in the draft, but he obviously hurt his back and his draft stock has fell. And I feel like with how the Ducks are built, they are in a position where they can take that risk of drafting high-end talent with the risk of the injuries that can come with it because they still have a pretty darn good young core already established and in the NHL. Plus, they have Beckett Seneca on the way up too. So I feel like they can take that risk. And also imagine the Ducks Disney days with Roger McQueen on riding a Lightning McQueen car in Cars Land.
Oh,
It is just
you're
too
doing 4D chess.
perfect.
I love it.
It's too
I love
perfect.
You should be the marketing guy for the Ducks.
Oh,
Yeah.
my gosh.
No, this draft is a weaker draft. So like I think we're all sitting on McQueen because like, yeah, that sounds cool, right? They literally, realistically, they could draft like 8 different guys in that spot.
Yeah.
it's
This
so
is that big. That's why.
And also-
that's why I went there.
And another thing too, I think he'd be a great fit for the prototypical Verbeek guy because he's 6'5", 200 pounds. Like
kid.
he's got an elite skill if he's healthy, but he's also got size, which obviously Pat Verbeek likes. So, and also I don't think he's going to get drafted in the top 15, but projected late round pick. Shout out Cullen Potter, forward freshman from Arizona State.
So, should I go Lucas Kelly for my Angels pick? Gun ho reliever at Arizona State. Brandon Compton.
Cole
Oh,
Carlin.
I'll stick on the Thomas Murray train. I'll stick. We'll stay in Oklahoma. I'll go with Eli Willits, number 2, and I'm gonna go with
Reggie's son.
Carter Bear. I'm gonna go with Carter Bear, boys. Give me a goal scorer.
Carter Bear. I've heard that name too.
Give
I
me
like
a
it.
Yeah.
goal scorer.
Again,
from
another
Medford,
good
man.
name. Another
Yeah.
like a jersey with bear on the back, and then you have him ride, I don't know, Winnie the Pooh,
Yeah.
right?
Big Disney days. Get them both. Trade up. Get McQueen and Bear. Go sign Ethan Bear, who is one of my favorite players. So, that's it, guys. We've gone off the rails. We've hit everything that we need to hit. For Wings on Katella. Oh, we are going to stop by Ike's Love and Sandwiches coming up here soon. We're going to figure out a date, and just if you head over to Ike's, let them know that we sent you. They'll take care of you, and we'll figure it out. And yeah, you guys can follow Zach Kavanaugh on Twitter at ZachCav, ZACHCAV. You can follow Thomas Murray on X, Twitter, whatever it is, OnlyFans, at Thomas_L_Murray. And Jack Janes, you can find him on Snapchat at JackJanes_.
Snapchat.
I'm going to take a social media break, so I won't even give it to you. You can follow us also at the Sporting Tribune at Sporting Trib. For Wings on Katella, brought to you by the sportingtribune.com. I'm Taylor Blake Ward. You guys have an awesome week.